All right, looks like we have people joining us today. Happy Wednesday. And we can go ahead and get started. Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. I'm Meg Winters, a Senior Account Manager at Goodway Group, and I'll be your moderator. We've got a really prevalent topic on how to be strategic with brand building and demand generation, especially during uncertain times, as retailers face rising costs and both brands and advertisers question their marketing spend strategy. Today, I'm joined by two great panelists who will be sharing their expertise as well as hot tips you can start using right away. So let me introduce them. We have Tiffany from Fleet Feet, one of my favorite clients, who is the Senior Director of Performance Marketing and Partnerships. For those of you who don't know, Fleet Feet is a specialty retailer focused on running shoes, apparels, and accessories with over 280 locally owned stores and franchises across the US. Fleet Feet focuses on creating community through training and running in local communities. And Tiffany certainly knows a thing or two about brand building and demand driving efforts while being nimble. So Tiffany, we're glad to have you here today. And then we also have Adam Fricke from Tough. He's the head of creative there. And Tough is a part of the Goodway group of companies of family, serving clients with a focus on growth through creative and performance marketing. So for today, Adam will share with us his expertise on brand times demand from a creative lens. We're thrilled to have you all here today as we unpack the growth formula. So grab your coffee and lace up your walking shoes, and we're going to get right into this so you can learn from both perspectives, from the client side and the brand side. And at the end, we'll take some questions in the Q&A field, so feel free to drop them in the chat as we move along. All right, to kick things off, we're starting with the foundational concept called the growth formula. This idea centers around the strategic alignment of brand building and demand generation efforts, two areas that are often treated separately, but when combined, can drive far greater impact in today's landscape, marked by economic pressure, shifting consumer behavior, and potential supply chain disruptions and rising costs due to the recent Liberation Day tariffs. This alignment isn't just smart, it's necessary. We're going to explore why branding is more critical than ever, especially during these uncertain times, and how integrating it with demand media and flexible budgeting helps brands stay agile, relevant, and set up for long-term growth. Let's jump right in. This first question kind of gets to the core of what we're here to talk about today. So Tiffany, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this first one. Why should brands prioritize integrated brand and demand strategies? And how does this lead to better outcomes instead of treating them as separate efforts?
I'll just start out by saying that our teams were siloed for years. So we had brand in our marketing department, and then we had demand in our digital department. And within that structure, we had different KPIs, we had significantly different budgets, and it often felt like our focus was really centered on that immediate impact, sometimes over long-term growth. And in the marketing department, we were conducting annual brand awareness surveys, and what we continued to find was in markets where we had stores, where people were purchasing running shoes or apparel, only a little more than half had ever heard of Fleet Feet. And that was aided awareness. So even if they had heard of Fleet Feet, that didn't necessarily mean that they knew our brand values, knew that we were a running retailer. And this is a problem because if consumers don't know that your brand exists, they really can't shop with you. And so it really kind of illustrated quickly for us that we needed to bring those two teams together. So about 2 years ago, we launched our first national brand campaign called Reasons We Won, and it really did exceed our expectations. The goal of the campaign was to showcase the emotional connection of our real customers and the emotional connection that they specifically had with Fleet Feet and the positive impact that running had on their lives. We wanted to drive awareness and we wanted to reach new customers. And so we really focused on new channels, which was easy because we hadn't really been investing in upper funnel. So we looked at Spotify, Hulu, and YouTube to introduce Fleet Feet to its significantly expanded audience, specifically in our local markets. And not only were we able to drive awareness, but we were also able to drive relative search lift. And while conversion wasn't necessarily a goal of that campaign because it really was focused on upper funnel. We did start to see some sales conversion specifically through YouTube, which really opened up that internal conversation again in how can people shop with us if we don't know we exist. And now we're working on this upper funnel campaign, but we're starting to see conversion. So is there an opportunity for us to really bring our teams together and start building full funnel strategies? And within that, and some of the success that we started to see with that, our vendor partners began seeing an opportunity to grow their own awareness within the running and retail space as well. So we got to this point where we had the brand team really working closely with the demand team, building and connecting messaging.
Awesome. Yeah, I think that's a perfect example. I remember when you all launched that Reasons We Run campaign, and it was a hit, and definitely showcased why having awareness media activated alongside the revenue driving efforts did help boost your bottom line and also strengthen your core customer base. It's also great to see how much your vendor partners like Brooks and ASICs value the partnership and have come to trust and see that opportunity to drive awareness of their product at Fleet Feet. Adam, would love to hear your perspective from a creative side. Have you seen any standout creative examples where combining brand and performance drove strong results?
Yeah, definitely. In this running category, I love some of the creative that's being made by a brand called Hoka. They are one of Fleet Feet's top vendors in this category. They're very well known, if you haven't heard of them, for having really comfortable running shoes. But you probably see them on people who are not running too. They're just very comfortable and people love wearing them, wherever they go. And I think a lot of this is because some of their like full funnel creative really supports that messaging. One of their brand messages is the idea that running feels like flying. And that's not been my personal experience with running, but I definitely get to, how that alludes this like high performance running and comfort kind of balance. And they could just say that in their demand creative, but they don't because they know that a lot of other brands are bragging about comfortable running shoes too. So instead, they choose to show it through their entire marketing funnel using their brand. So last year, they had this huge campaign with these different hero spots that featured the bird and their logo to kind of play off of that idea of flying. And then throughout the spot, the bird flies over different landscapes with different runners and different terrain. So throughout this, short 30-second spot, you're seeing all of their different product line and all of these different types of running. But then it's paired with a tagline at the end that I find really interesting. And it's fly at your own pace, which kind of flips that on its head and makes it feel really approachable to the everyday user who might just want to wear their Hokas walking the dog or going to the grocery store, which is how I would probably use them. And then from there with email drip campaigns to nurture audiences, we're seeing different video, different copy, and different images that kind of support these different styles of running based on whatever your interest may be. So they've got different kind of content tracks for trail runners, new runners, marathoners, and that kind of thing. And they also might see some social influencers posting their stories with running. That's not just focused on the actual product, but just kind of creating this sense of community around running. And if you're part of the running community, you probably know that community is such a big part of that. And then from there, retargeting campaigns are showing this beautiful product imagery that kind of alludes back to this hero spot. So you're seeing just really nice imagery of shoes on trails or on sidewalks, these different kind of storylines that you see throughout the hero spot. So you're kind of getting that full funnel messaging in different parts and different areas throughout your day as you can kind of experience this content in everyday life. So by this point, viewers know of the brand, which Tiffany mentioned earlier is sometimes like half the battle. They're engaging with these different product lines. They kind of get a sense of what might be the best fit for their needs. And they might already know some evaluation type metrics like price point and things like that they might be considering as they're looking at other brands. I also see Tiffany and the Fleet Feet team. They're doing a really great job of this as well, so I got to brag on her. And some recent prospecting creative. Tiffany was actually the star in a video that's part of a prospecting campaign that encourages people to go running with people in their community, which is really powerful. And so these prospecting videos, they start with this real life scenario of people needing an outlet in their everyday life. Whether it be frustrated after a tough day of work or just needing a moment to yourself after chasing kids around. And then meeting at Fleet Feet for a run club is positioned as this outlet. And it just kind of positions the store is less of a store and more of like a entry point for runners to kind of like find their space and their place to be outside of their normal routines. And then from there, these retargeting campaigns, we're seeing the storefront at the beginning of the video. So you can kind of like make that connection and then going into the store to check out the different product lines and learn more about the shoes themselves. These ads are like generally where you would see more specific offers and even like local level events and things like that that feel really specific to you wherever you're at in your customer journey. And the interesting thing that we're seeing within the data for these creatives is that by intertwining the Fleet Feet brand with the product that they carry, it actually leads to more efficient performance than some of their vendor-only creative that they've run in the past. Tiffany, do you have any thoughts there?
Yeah, I was just going to say that's exactly right. And to your point earlier about Hoka, in years past, we probably would have just taken creative and did take creative directly from our vendors when we were in two separate departments. And so we would have had vendors working with folks from the marketing side. We would have had them working directly with folks in the digital and the paid media side. And vendors would produce their own creative, which would be relevant for their brand, not necessarily relevant for Fleet Feet and their brand. And they would send it to us, and then we would put that through our different paid media channels. And what we've found over time is in bringing the two teams together and really thinking through our different campaign strategies, thinking through our different product launches, thinking about how we can make people aware of not only Fleet Feet, but the products that we carry, that's really allowed us to have more impactful performance from upper, mid, and lower funnel. And so we've been put in a better position to be able to test what Fleet Feet creative really looks like and how it's resonating with our audiences and leading to greater consideration and conversion.
Yeah, it's been awesome to see the evolution from the client side. And, I think that's spot on when you really care about your creative and change things up, it helps to drive those down funnel actions. All right, moving on to our next topic. We're going to explore why branding is essential, especially during these tough times, and why it's more crucial than ever now. It's been proven that when brands stop advertising for a year or more, sales often decline and smaller brands usually suffer greater declines year over year. Investing in brand and demand is a strategic investment for business growth. Branding acts as both an emotional connection and a strategic compass for companies. When paired with demand media and flexible budgeting, it forms a powerful trio that helps brands stay agile, competitive, and resilient through uncertainty. So this makes total sense. And a lot of brands get caught up with wanting short-term success and forget how impactful funding the top of the funnel can be, even if it takes much longer. It's not just the end result. Brand and demand can further results. And that's what makes it even more exciting. And as you'll see in our guide, because of the work's findings in the multiplier effect study that they did, it shows the benefits of performance and brand advertising working better together. In fact, ROI is lifted 90% when shifting strategies from a mixed approach with performance and equity together. Brands that continue to integrate both while keeping their consumers at the center create momentum. And that's kind of what you heard just above, talking about the creative and making sure we're showcasing the brand in everything that we do. It's more successful, and it's all due to that flywheel effect, having shared goals like engagement, loyalty, and consistency at the center of it all. So our first question here is going to be, why is it critical to lean into branding during periods of economic uncertainty like we're in now? And how does this support long-term success while managing current constraints? Tiffany, if you could walk us through your experience in your industry and with Fleet Feet, that'd be awesome.
Sure. I'll start by saying that I totally agree with brands getting caught up sometimes in short-term success, which is exactly what happened to us last year. And Meg knows this well. We started the year with what we thought was one budget, and then quickly into the year, we had to reduce our budget by a little more than 50%, which took a lot of thought in what we were going to do with our remaining budget. We had to be really thoughtful in the way in which we were going to approach different channels and how we were going to leverage those channels to really ensure we were staying top of mind throughout the year, and how we were going to approach the plan a little bit differently. I think in general, the run specialty channel has historically been recession resistant. And so in times of economic uncertainty, what we found as an industry, as a run specialty industry, is that running and walking often remain a part of people's mental health and their fitness routines. So that's been helpful for us as an industry because people don't need a gym membership necessarily. They don't need special equipment. There's not a lot of additional things that need to be purchased. You really just need a pair of good running shoes to get started. And so when you have different choices and where you can buy those running shoes, you can buy them at Amazon, you can buy them at Dick's. What makes you think about and consider Fleet Feet? And again, to my point earlier, just about our aided awareness in markets where we have stores, only a little more than 50% of people who are already purchasing running shoes and apparel have heard of us. And so thinking about those different insights and just thinking about how to best sort of prepare for uncertain times, we thought about our campaign for this year, and we really built it around what we're calling Thank You Running. And so it's creative, that's around a few different themes and a few different character personas. So to Adam's point earlier, one of our themes this year was discovering the experience of running and just the positive impact that joining a running club can have on a person, which is really something only Fleet Feet offers in each of our running communities. So we really want to connect with the person who's maybe thought about starting to run or walk more regularly, but hasn't yet taken that first step. And so in that way, those spots really aren't about the product, but it's about the experience that you get when you come into our store. And then another theme that we have this year that we actually just launched is outfitting the whole family, and really talking about the fact that our stores aren't just for runners. So again, to Adam's point of walking the dog and maybe getting his hocus for that. But we're also about families who want to move and enjoy moving. And a lot of our data does show that our customers and general consumers, they will run as a part of their routine, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they identify as a runner. And so we really want to lean into our store's other unique attributes. So in outfitting the whole family, we have this really nice hero shot of our fit process, coming into the store, stepping up on our Fit ID machine, and like getting that 3D scan and that 3D view that helps you understand what type of shoe is going to give you your best fit based on what activities you're planning to do, but then also elevating different products as a part of that. So to the point earlier, and thinking about how we can feature our vendor brands a little bit more effectively, we've got really nice shots of different vendors, different styles of footwear. We are including kids footwear in this spot, and showing a family that's running together, that's enjoying the playground, that's going for a walk, and giving people reasons to come in store and just see the assortment of products that are available to them, even if they don't consider themselves a runner. A few other themes that we have this year, our next one will be around igniting your run, and that's really telling a speed story, and speed is whatever that means to you. It's not necessarily finishing a marathon in 2 hours and 30 minutes. It can be finishing a marathon in 6 hours or going really fast around your block. So it's not necessarily something that's intended to be specifically for that performance runner, but everybody understanding what that is. And then again, elevating the product, the types of footwear, the vendors who are producing innovative footwear that can really help elevate that. So again, just thinking about different ways that we can tell relevant brand stories and what those differentiators are, so that when a customer is ready to make a purchase, they are thinking about Fleet Feet, we are in their consideration set, they understand what our brand differentiators are and why they might want to come into a store, versus taking the money that they might have available to go purchase their running shoes and going to a Dick's Sporting Goods or an Amazon instead.
Yeah, I might be biased, but that all sounds like it resonates with me. And I love the current spots that you all have been producing and outfitting the whole family and kind of just tapping into some new ways to reach different markets. So it's awesome to see. From my perspective, I think that's what you said is spot on. It's important for brands to stay visible and consistent, especially during times where, you know, there's a lot of uncertainty around us. In order for brands to stick around for long, they need to build trust with their core consumers. And then also just, you know, focusing the messaging and connecting online sets you up to thrive when the economy will recover. All right, thanks, Tiffany. Adam, if you could talk us through how marketers can stay nimble while ensuring campaigns are delivering on both brand and demand goals, I'll kick it over to you.
Yeah, so we see time and again that staying nimble with your creative and responding well to cultural moments like this can play a huge role in brand loyalty. Because people don't stop spending altogether in times like this, but we do know that they become more thoughtful in their spending. So they're more likely to spend money with brands that they already know, like, and trust. So by having a strong brand, you're giving people confidence in who they're actually supporting. And strong brands can typically see lower cost per acquisition and even higher lifetime value in these moments from like a demand point of view, because they're already created the sense of stability and established trust with their audience. One example of this that I love is in 2017, Patagonia, the outdoor brand, they sprung into action with a campaign that responded to an event that affected public lands. And they just leaned into their core values as a brand and completely overhauled their homepage. They pushed some new branded content with some engaging stories. And even filed a lawsuit about it. So it definitely ruffled some feathers of some of their more like casual customer base, but it really deepened their connection with their core audience of those outdoor enthusiasts who are passionate about the environment and are actively looking to support brands that are eco-conscious. So with that campaign, of course, they increased their website traffic by a ton. They got a lot of notoriety for it. But they also saw a surge in sales during that time period when a lot of people thought that it was a risky move. So I think the lesson from that is that it's not all that risky to double down on your brand's core values when times are weird. And it's actually super sticky for brands to do that because it can build equity in your brand long term.
Yeah, that's a great example. I think that's totally it. What you just said at the end, keeping that brand equity top of mind for customers and showcasing why they should shop with you. All right, let's move on to the next topic, which is incredibly relevant for anyone looking to drive sustainable growth. In today's fast-paced market, it's important to make sure your brand and demand campaigns are strategically aligned and not just working in silos. So Tiffany kind of spoke to this a little bit before as well. With some zooming out and recalibrating of your strategy, you can develop a more effective approach and strategy to drive long-term brand equity while also achieving short-term conversions and making sure that every dollar works harder for you. So let's all answer the next question, and I can take a stab at it first. So from the first question is, how does aligning brand building efforts with lower funnel demand campaigns create better outcomes? And from my perspective, I think like aligning brand building efforts with lower funnel demand campaigns, you're able to guide customers seamlessly through the entire journey, from awareness to decision, and that's kind of, you know, that full funnel approach. Brand building media such as a 15-second Netflix spot or a Spotify playlist takeover helps establish trust, recognition, and an emotional connection with consumers, and it's critical for that to stay top of mind. And then also just meeting customers where they're at, on the couch eating popcorn, on their Peloton, or jamming out on their commute to work. I mean, we're inundated these days with advertising, but it's important to like hit those consumers where you want them and where you know they are at. Retargeting ads or search keyword tactics used in lower funnel campaigns help to nudge these engaged customers to take action. And so really like having that integrated approach from top to bottom will just lead to higher conversion rates and amplify results. And we've seen that with Fleet Feet and with other clients that we work on. A strong brand presence through consistent and compelling storytelling gets customers across the finish line when making a buying decision because they're more likely to remember and recall your product over competitors. Brand awareness is that fuel that targets and creates that effective demand generation campaigns, while lower funnel campaigns generate quicker sales and while also reinforcing your brand message. And ultimately, it's that synergy that will deliver that higher ROI for strategies than when handled separately. So that's kind of everything that we're talking about today. So let's dig into the good stuff. What are some actionable ways to measure success and fine-tune your campaigns so your budget works overtime for you? Tiffany, reflecting on your success story with Goodway, how has aligning campaigns across co-op brands amplified your results?
Sure. I'll just start by, again, kind of going back to the earlier point that 2 years ago was the first time we really launched a brand campaign and put any kind of strategic focus on upper funnel paid advertising. And so working with Goodway, having identified Spotify, Hulu, and YouTube as these optimal channels to really test that upper funnel advertising and really expand our audience. But then separately on the other side of the house, because we were in 2 different departments, that team was continuing to really invest in Google and Meta as part of our lower funnel vendor funded efforts. And so what we did find was that combined reach of each channel really did help to drive both awareness and sales. So last year we made the strategic decision to actually combine the departments and spent a lot of the year focusing on that cross-team campaign collaboration. And so in the back half of the year, we began creating more and more ads on behalf of our vendors, using their creative and like testing how the performance between the two was really impacting our sales and impacting our conversion. And we were also testing consideration. I think we tested for the first time Curve, a video channel that Goodway had introduced. So we had a lot that we were looking at and trying to better understand what was performing well, what was outperforming. We started seeing an increase in click-through rates that was well above benchmark. So that was all kind of working together to demonstrate internally to the team, but also externally to our vendor partners, just the impact of that combination of brand and demand and what we could really unlock when we had additional investment from our partners. Now we want to have them allocate more into sort of that upper and mid funnel. They've all sort of bought into that with us and kind of going on this journey with us, expanding our investments, reallocating and shifting some of our existing budget, and really testing more and testing new channels so that we can, to your point, Meg, reach more people where they are and share our brand message, understand what our brand attributes are and what our products are. So I think the measurable outcome is just in ensuring that the teams are working together, building those campaign strategies together, agreeing on what we want our desired outcomes to be, and then executing together. And I think communicating back just to the relevant stakeholders in a way that really demonstrates that flywheel and how everybody is working together.
Yeah, totally. I think we've had a lot of success with that and we'll continue to build on that this year. So let's dive into a little bit more on the measurement side of things. I'll kind of introduce Goodway Group's outcome engineering here, which improves performance by focusing on real business results and not just clicks. And with this, we start with the end in mind, envisioning our client specific business outcomes first. And then we use the data to strategically blend brand and demand across the entire consumer journey, constantly measuring and optimizing for those tangible goals. We all know how important it is to have a good measurement strategy and to paint a complete picture. It's often tempting to rely solely on platform attribution, which just is misleading. So developing a test and learn roadmap has been really helpful for our team, and we've implemented this with Fleet Feet this year, and last year even too when we started doing some testing. So running the media that way and having a roadmap is helpful for our clients to see what works and to always being able to look at the roadmap and see where we're at. We also make sure with our clients that we're tracking accurate and meaningful KPIs that we can align and tie back to their business results and continue to iterate from there. So another measurement solution that we've used and some testing that we've done is incrementality testing, and so that we can identify which channels truly drive conversions. We've also implemented marketing mix modeling to show how brand and demand work together to drive sales, and also scenario modeling to get insights and predict different budgeting strategies. This all helps when we look at channel effectiveness and where we can shift media dollars from top to bottom. Tiffany, what are your thoughts on measurement, considering we recently did an MMM and scenario planning exercise for Fleet Feet?
I think the MMM was really helpful for us in looking at where we were investing and maybe where we were over investing, because it was really the first time that we've had that level of analysis done to really inform some of our decision making. I think, and if it hasn't been clear in some of the things I've been saying, I think we inherently knew we had an opportunity to invest in upper funnel channels, but for a variety of reasons, we weren't really positioned to at the level that we wanted. And I think when we saw it in the model, it was really impactful. It was a really impactful moment for our leadership team to see some of the charts that Goodway presented, which was showing our spend and it was showing what the return was. And it really just nicely demonstrated, like, hey, here are some channels that maybe you've sort of already optimized, but we're continuing to invest in. And if we pulled back a little bit on this channel and we invested instead over here, you could start to see some immediate impact and some immediate efficiencies. So I think what it really helped us do was just think about, especially this year, as we're thinking about maybe if we want to be a little bit more conservative with our budgets, be a little bit more conservative in how we're pacing our cadence and spending and when and where we're choosing to invest. It allowed us to just think about, okay, within our existing budget, how can we be smarter? How can we make sure that we are actually optimizing the channels that we think we're optimizing versus maybe oversaturating a specific channel? And I think the same thing with the scenario modeling. What that sort of did for us is look at, okay, you've got this set budget and here's how you can optimize. And to the degree that incremental budget does become available, here are the things that you should be considering so that you maybe don't put yourself in that same situation again, where you're potentially oversaturating one channel where there's maybe more opportunity to be had somewhere else, whether that's testing it or trying a different approach altogether with that channel. So I think some of the things that came out of it in particular, and Meg, you referenced this earlier, we're going to be testing Netflix in May and June. And that was a direct result of what came out of the MMM and came out of scenario modeling and just thinking about how we can tap into this new channel and maybe reach a newer audience for us. So I'm really excited about that and excited to see what comes out of that.
Yeah, I think that'll be a really exciting test and definitely get a lot of good learnings from that. And I think also like some of the results from the MMM showed some other channels that you have tested in the past pop up and show that we might have an opportunity there to test again or to invest a little bit more in different places. So I think it's all really impactful, and I'm excited we're implementing it across the year. All right, from a creative side, Adam, I'd love to hear your thoughts on how creative strategies drive cohesion across the full funnel while maximizing ROI. And if you have any tips you can share with the group on making creative work harder for both branding and demand.
Yeah, definitely. For brand and demand to work really well together, I think creative needs to kind of have a different look and feel through different phases of a customer journey, be catered to different audiences and on different channels that they're engaging with the content. So, I mean, sometimes feature-focused messaging alone probably isn't going to build a brand. And on the flip side, aspirational messaging probably isn't going to do a great job of moving product off shelves. But you can have both if there's a unifying theme in all the creative. So thinking of Hoka, the flying example, there's different ways to bring that to life for different phases in the customer journey. The central idea isn't changed, it's just the way that it's presented. So I think the single most impactful thing that you can start doing today is to start from a central value prop that's unique in your space, and then testing multiple iterations of that big idea across different funnel stages and different marketing channels to see how they resonate with different audiences and in different spaces. So once you've got your kind of like high level idea, one way that we like to set up well for multiple iterations is to approach creative execution from a modular mindset, because there's so many different creative variables that can impact how your creative can land with an audience. There's headlines, there's supporting points, there's calls to action, visuals, even how things move in a video or an animation contribute to the tone, and how things can perform. So the list is really endless. So we want to think about them modularly because it becomes easier to iterate and test to see which of those specific variables are what's driving results. And this is true for any business, any funnel stage, any KPI that we can test things like this. So you can think of your different creative variables like headlines and CTAs and imagery, all of those things as like Lego blocks. And if you're playing with Legos, you know that you can generally build something with blocks fairly interchangeably. It kind of changes the look of your structure, but no matter what blocks you're using, it doesn't drastically change the structure of what you're building. And so we kind of view creative as the same way. If there's a unifying theme or message in your creative, the overall structure that you're trying to build, you can easily test and swap out different building blocks to get a better feel for what's working in specific audiences. So some people, respond to feeling cool, and some people want to feel like they've got a good value. And CTAs can perform differently in top of funnel versus bottom of funnel. So enabling different creative elements to be easily swapped without totally sending a creative team back to the board and like trying to drum up something new as quickly as possible. They really set you up for success to find different winning combinations in your campaigns to make sure you're optimizing your media spend that way. So the way that we make this as efficient as possible is to actually keep your creative teammates close to the overarching strategy. And I think that they should have an understanding of all campaigns, audiences and KPIs. It's also true that we are sometimes afraid of spreadsheets and data, but I think when creatives understand the overall strategy and they know who their creative is being made for, they don't just make really pretty looking things, but they make really smart creative. And I think that's really important today when there's so much noise out there. Smart creative is generally what you want because we like our funnels and we want customer journeys to fit well into that funnel look and feel, but it doesn't always work that way. So I've seen best performing creative that does a bit of both brand and demand. It can reinforce the brand through tone and design, but it also has a way of driving action with clarity into brand values and really strong calls to action.
Well, thanks, Adam. I love that analogy of the Lego blocks. I think that really makes sense. And it's kind of an easy takeaway for everyone to go back to their teams and creative teams at different brands and just tweak little things or look at it all like it can be interchangeable easily. So
yeah, love some Legos.
Yeah, me too. All right, for our final focus today, we're going to take some time to share tips on how to stay agile with your marketing budgets and also allocating resources wisely, especially in today's volatile environment. Let's explore practical ways you can adopt your marketing tactics, whether that's shifting media spends, adjusting targeting, or finding gritty ways to produce or utilize your creative without sacrificing your broader strategy or long-term gains. So our first question is going to be, what practices can help commerce leaders remain agile with their media plans? And if you all can share some examples of reallocating budgets, how to do it in response to changing market demands, I'll let Tiffany go first.
Sure. I'll just start with monitoring our dashboards in real time. And I think from a paid media perspective, we've had times where the performance has looked really strong. So that's allowed us to unlock additional budget. And then that's allowed us to increase our investments with certain channels. We've had other times where we maybe saw something happening, but didn't necessarily understand what levers were driving that. And so we paused our spend just so that we could understand and try to uncover maybe what was going on, to help us have a little bit more information to move forward. We've also questioned some of the channels that we invest in. So just because you should play in some space doesn't mean you necessarily should based on your brand. And for us, a great example of that was affiliate marketing. In the past few years, we've been investing pretty significantly in affiliate marketing, and it started to become challenging because Fleet Feet is rarely, if ever, promotional. And so we made the strategic decision to just adjust that budget and really refine our publisher lists and take a really close look at who we were partnered with from a publisher perspective. So we still are an affiliate, but it looks very different today. And the strategy for affiliate looks very different today than it looked even 4 or 5 months ago. And so we're continuing to monitor that and continuing to monitor where and how we're showing up to ensure that it is actually a meaningful channel for us and not just maybe a best practice channel for certain types of brands that for us and not being promotional may not be as effective. And then the other thing that we would do that I would say has been helpful for us from a budget perspective is just producing our own creative, to the point earlier with vendor advertising, and producing our own creative that weaves in and blends in our vendors and kind of showcases them through our own brand lens. We have a very talented team, and they are very, very nimble in what they are able to pull off, and with some of the budgets that they're able to do so with. So that has been really helpful in just the level of product that we're able to pull together and produce in the spots that we're able to do. Yeah, they're excellent, and it is an extremely nimble budget.
Yeah, totally. And I think to your first point, just monitoring performance data with real-time dashboards, and being able to quickly pivot and shift dollars around is definitely key here. Adam, from a creative perspective, I mean, Tiffany just kind of hit on how their team is really agile and nimble when it comes to producing their creative in-house. What role does testing play in ensuring that agility, and how can brands balance short-term adjustments with long-term strategy?
Yeah, I think testing is largely how we're able to stay agile and accountable. I think data with that creative testing gives us confidence to adapt on the fly and make new creative, but it also it helps us make sure that we're staying aligned with those like long-term goals. And I think that just in general, without testing, we're generally guessing, and guessing can get very expensive. So testing and just going in directions that data leads us with these kind of like longer term North Star metrics to keep us in line is a good place to start. As we're talking about like creative testing, there's a few things I like to keep in mind. One is to start with like a why behind each test. Just simply throwing out new creative isn't necessarily the strongest test. So if you can start with a hypothesis, that's like a really great way to begin. So like a short-term goal or a short-term hypothesis could be, I think the call to action of shop the sale will drive more clicks than shop now. And you can A/B test those and see what your assumption was and see what the actual outcome was to kind of be able to determine how results differ from your initial line of thinking. I'm surprised all the time at things that work, or the things that I assume will work, don't work. And that's just like part of testing, and being able to go down a rabbit hole off of something that's working is really powerful. Yeah, I'll hit on the Lego blocks one more time, using modular creative to be able to adapt on the fly and get new creative in market as quickly as possible is definitely one way to stay agile. We also talk a lot about like establishing a consistent cadence for testing, especially with creative. Sometimes it's like micro adjustments, like with headlines or captions or calls to action. I know the media teams are doing weekly, sometimes more frequent or less frequent budget shifting. We'll do monthly creative refreshes to make sure that we're not struggling with ad fatigue. And then, of course, like quarterly campaign reviews to keep an eye on some of those like longer term metrics. And speaking of metrics, just clearly communicating all those KPIs across teams, including creative when it's possible, because we just want to make sure that everybody is measuring the same way. And even if we're changing goals, shifting KPIs along the way, just making sure that everybody is measuring things the same way is really important.
Great tips. I think, yeah, with Fleet Feet this year, we started implementing more regular creative refreshes, and we've definitely seen the impact there and better performance when we do that, so that we have different creative running throughout the year. All right. Our second question here is, what's the most effective split between branding and performance marketing? And I think this is really important, a question that we have received often, and maybe one that everyone out there is just dying to know in order to have the right answer to. What is the most effective split between this, brand and demand marketing? So I'll take a stab at it first. There's market research out there, and that I've seen with a rule of thumb of a 60-40 budget split for the long-term growth. So I think 60% brand building and 40% performance marketing. However, there's not really a fixed ratio in my opinion. It definitely depends on the client's goals. We've had clients that go, higher or lower on either side, just depending on the short versus long-term goals, industry, longevity of the brand. Lots of seasonality comes into play as well with holidays or back to school, peak running season for Fleet Feet. And there's just different industries that impact this. So there's a lot of testing and learning that comes in, and that's things we can do with the media on the media side and add into our roadmap is just continuous measurement of ROI for both brand and demand, in order to help find that optimal and adaptable mix. So would love to hear your thoughts on this, Tiffany and Adam.
I agree with you. I don't know that there's one right answer. I think it's very dependent on the brand and the campaign and the desired outcome. And just thinking about Fleet Feet in general, we have a lot of different stakeholders. So it would also depend too, if we're talking about some of our national marketing efforts on behalf of the entire brand or local marketing efforts, which is completely different based on the market and based on whether or not it's locally owned, whether or not it's one of our company doors, how long that store has been in market, whether or not they're trying to increase store traffic because they're having an event or a training program or because there's a new product launch. So I think, yeah, thinking through that split and that spend of how much you're going to invest in brand and how much you're going to invest in demand is really dependent on all of those different factors as you outlined, Meg.
Adam, what are your thoughts?
Agreed. I think it's just, yeah, striking a balance, and it looks a little bit different for everybody. I think testing and tracking results and insights along the way is really important. So it kind of forces you to have a pulse on things at every point in time. So just the consistency and like cadence to be able to keep a pulse helps you stay flexible and respond accordingly.
Awesome. Yeah, I think the key is to keep testing, and it just depends. There's not necessarily a right answer, but I think at the end of the day, having a mix of brand and demand and making sure you're focused on both is definitely the key here. All right, so I'm going to kind of take us through our last little bit here. We're going to just reiterate some key insights and also share what everyone thinks. So it's been a really valuable conversation, and I know we all have thought about brand and demand a lot, and there's definitely a lot more out there. So we want to close out by hearing from everyone on what is the one thing you want people to know from your end. And I can go first. So I think the biggest takeaway for me is that brand awareness matters and it's vital for long-term success. And without it, brands aren't going to be as successful as they can be. So brands should continue to fund awareness tactics if they want to drive sales and keep customers around, while also finding new fans of their brands. I would say don't shy away and find ways to be gritty, like you've heard from Fleet Feet today, from their creative production team, to just having nimbleness with their budget being cut and everything in between. Adam, would love to hear your take first here.
Yeah, I think it was just very interesting to hear from Tiffany's experience too, just how siloed brand and demand teams can sometimes feel. And I think that that is probably a very common thread. And if yeah, it's not a natural integration, I would just kind of like encourage people to be the first person to step out of your lane and into another, not in an aggressive way, but just in a way to close that gap and start addressing some of those like root issues together as a team and just figuring it out together. I think that's the only way that brands start closing that gap and really figuring out what's possible when you treat brand and demand together and not separate.
Yeah,
Okay.
I agree. I agree with both of your insights. I think awareness for sure matters. I said that earlier around if consumers can't convert if they don't know that you exist. And again, for us, people are buying what we have to sell and they still aren't aware of who we are in markets where we have stores. So awareness is really important in ensuring that people know who you are, what your value proposition is, what your product offering is, and why they should want to come and shop with you or be a part of your brand in some way, shape, or form. And Adam, to your point too, yeah, the way in which that the teams work together. Your point earlier about creative teams being a part of the discussion and being a part of the strategy and the level of creative that they can produce if they know kind of the reasons behind and they understand the goals behind it. So bringing together the brand team and the demand team, bringing the creative team in so that everybody can work cohesively and collectively to really build that strategy, to plan together, align on what those business outcomes need to be, and really execute together.
Awesome. All right, that wraps up our main conversation for today with our panelists, but we'd love to hear any thoughts or questions. So take the next couple minutes and drop them into the Q&A box and we can start going through them. I know we only have a few minutes left, but we will answer a few questions if there's any out there. So don't be shy. And our guide for the brand times demand guide will be on our website. So we dropped that in the chat. So feel free to download that as well. And reach out to us with any questions. You can take a look at the guide on our website, reach out with any questions. We hope it gives you fresh ideas and some interesting angles. All right, looks like we got a few questions. So I'm gonna start with this first one. Are there any misconceptions about brand versus demand marketing that's stopping brands from achieving their goals? Tiffany, do you have any thoughts on that one?
My first thought is around the misconception around brand that one of their main KPIs is obviously around awareness, but in thinking through how do you prove the value of that? And it's obviously much more tangible when you're focused on demand and you can focus on sales and you can focus on ROAS, and that feels more tangible to the executive leadership, where a brand maybe feels a little bit less tangible because you really can't prove in some ways that all of the investments that you're making across the different brand awareness channels and upper funnel advertising until you can really start to implement deeper analysis through attribution and understanding how it's all really working together. And so I think companies that are able to marry those two things and prove out attribution are served much better when talking about brand and demand. I think the organizations that aren't able to focus as much on attribution or aren't able to really tell that story of how brand investments are creating a bottom line impact. I think that's probably where the misconception is between the two, and that's ultimately what's helping to prevent some of those goals from being reached.
Yeah, totally agree. And I think that's what is the hard part. But also, to your point, looking at attribution and kind of like knowing that brand has a longer term effect can help tie everything together. And also like having those testing strategies implemented as well, and KPIs that can tie back to your business goals. Awesome. All right, this one's for you, Adam. How do you adjust creative and messaging to reflect economic conditions without appearing reactive?
Ooh, that's a tricky one.
I know.
Without appearing reactive, I think I think it's naturally okay to have a reactive response to economic conditions. We never know when things will impact economic conditions. So I think just being able to pivot within your brand values and take stances on things that feel within your wheelhouse and within your brand, and just being ready for that. It's not one of those things that you can like build a roadmap for and like have the campaign ready to launch on any given notice. So I think just knowing your brand well and maybe having a contingency plan ahead of times of like how would we respond to this situation or that situation, to be able to quickly act on things, and then also just knowing your brand well enough to have a sense of which issues and which things to have a stance on and which things to kind of like let the moment pass by.
Yeah, I think your example of Patagonia earlier was a good one too. That is just part of their brand and their nature is to, take action, and that's what they did even during economically hard times. So I think that was a good example there. Cool. Let's do one more. Let's see. How do you build a roadmap for testing new strategies and channels while balancing current performance demands? I can answer this a little bit, and then I'll see if Tiffany and Adam, you want to chime in. But I think we do this with our brands and our clients currently by building that roadmap for testing. We have longer term tests, but we also have shorter term tests. So oftentimes we'll have specific markets that we're testing in to see if we can see an impact before going all out into our full strategy. So that's what we're doing with a lot of our clients, so that we can balance our current demands with the performance side of marketing, and we can also see the impact in a smaller area, and do some testing for shorter periods of time, like two to 3 months of testing, take a little bit of a break and see the impact, and then decide if that's a strategy we want to move forward with. So I think it's just taking little pieces of your budget and making sure there's room in your budget for testing is important. Tiffany, Adam, any thoughts on that one?
Yeah, I just reiterate having a small budget to save to be able to test into things that you're curious about along the way. I think that's the only way to kind of like unlock new and higher performing areas is to consistently be trying new things and validating on a small scale, so that you can scale them up as you grow confidence and get proof back that it's working, so that it doesn't feel like this big risk. It's just something that feels kind of like a natural build over time.
And I love the incrementality testing that you referenced, Meg. That's something that we're doing in particular with search advertising with our stores and just proving out how many customers would have come in store having seen these ads, having not seen these ads. What does that look like when we increase budget, when we decrease budget? How does it look year over year? And when we think about how long the store has been in market or seasonality, I think all of that helps to really prove out what we think is happening so that we can get additional buy-in and support. Or alternatively, if it's not working the way that we believe that it's working, how can we then take some of that budget and apply it elsewhere, so we can test different channels and see what the results of that might be. So I think to your point, Meg, building in some of that budget ahead of time and as you're making the plan for the year and understanding what you're going to leave to do tests and understanding what times of year make sense to do something short so that you still maybe have additional months in the year to invest more in that if it's working well.
Yeah, totally agree. All right, awesome. Well, I know we're just at time, so perfect. Thanks everyone for joining us. As I mentioned before, we've just hit the surface on this topic of brand times demand, and there's definitely more. So we hope you have found this valuable, and we loved hearing from all sides, from brand to creative. So thank you, Tiffany. It's been a pleasure having you join us today, and Adam. Awesome to hear all the insights, and I love working with your team at Tough on everything creative, SEO, you name it. So please don't hesitate to reach out for anyone listening, to info@goodwaygroup.com or to any of us via LinkedIn. We'd be happy to help with implementing any of the strategies that we discussed today, or if you have any questions that we didn't cover, we'd be happy to have some conversations with you. So have a great rest of your day, and we'll talk soon. Thank you.